on. Yeah, this is a video that I think people have been wanting me to make ever since I kind of posted the teaser that a video like this might be happening on my channel. I bought this just a couple weeks ago. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, in the release of the Switch 2, already having a Nintendo Switch, I purchased a Wii U. A Nintendo Wii U. Why would I do that? Well, simply put, because this console is freaking awesome, and I don't care what anybody says. This console is good. So what happened to it? Well, before we even get into the elephant of the room, it's time for a bit of a history lesson about how not to sell a product. You see, it all goes back to the Nintendo Wii. This console was weird as hell and absolutely amazing, and everyone seemed to agree. What the heck is this? What is this controller? It looks like a TV remote. And yeah, it does look like a TV remote. It looks like a TV remote. It works like a TV remote. It's called a Wii remote. Actually, it's just called a Wii remote. I just added that because it was funny. This thing is weird. It has an IR pointer in the front. It doesn't have a gyroscope, but it connects to a sensor bar that you attach to the Nintendo Wii and awkwardly duct tape to the top of your TV or in front of it. You swing this thing around and it knows what you're doing. It's got one big button in the front. It's got a trigger in the back. It's got two more buttons where you kind of can reach them and then two more buttons where you definitely can't reach them. And it's got a D-pad that is just barely out of reach, just enough so you have to break your grip in order to access the D-pad. And hey, look, it's got a power button too, just for little bits and giggles. And Nintendo knew that this thing was incredibly stupid and weird, so they added this on the bottom of it. What does it do? It does this. Bam. Bam. Introducing the nunchuck. It's almost the exact same thing as another Wii remote, except it looks different, it holds differently, and it's asymmetrical. But this one gives you an analog stick. What does an analog stick do? It allows you to play Mario Galaxy while doing certain motions with this hand and other motions with this hand, swinging it around like it's nobody's business, inevitably bopping your middle finger off. Ow! And I mean, that's just the absolute bare minimum of what this thing was capable of. Mainly, this port right here could be used for basically anything. They included a basic controller setup that is relatively similar to this gamepad, and then they made it better later and just pretended like the original one never existed, even though the original one definitely still exists, and that original one had a little attachment port in the back that was retconned and pretended that it never existed after the new one came out, and that's the way it was meant to be. There was an ungodly surplus of plastic crap that you could put this thing into, including a baseball bat, a tennis racket, a bowling ball. You could put your TV remote into a bowling ball. It came with a steering wheel for Mario Kart Wii. There was a big plastic gun-looking attachment that you could use to play Call of Duty. It was wild what this thing was capable of. And this is the base Wii remote. After that, they created Wii Motion Plus. And what Wii Motion Plus did was give it a gyroscope so it could be even more accurate. Playing Mario Galaxy with this has worked perfectly fine for me. I'm terrified to see how unstoppable I'll be once I acquire a Toad Wii remote with Wii Motion Plus inside. I'll smash the whole world. The point is, the Wii was a tremendous success, and once the next console generation was coming around, i.e. the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, Nintendo had something up their sleeve. What was it? The Wii U, the next version of the Wii, the direct successor to the Wii. You see Wii, and then you see this thing next to it. What does the U stand for? I have no idea. User, United, Unification. It stands for gamepad. The U looks like the gamepad, it stands for gamepad. And this was the biggest, most interesting, and most obvious feature of the Wii U. Gone are the days of dealing with the Wii remote. Gone are the days of having to do motion control for everything. Ladies and gentlemen, the Wii U came with an actual regular looking controller. Regular looking, by alien standards. This thing is freaking weird, and it's also one of the coolest controllers ever made, but I'll get into that later. So, what went wrong? You've got the Wii, but with a bigger processor, a faster processor, bigger games, better graphics, faster loading times, everything about it is better, and it still uses Wii remotes, it still uses everything the Wii had? I mean, anyone who had a Wii, it seems like a no-brainer. Get a Wii U. Simply put, Nintendo unmarketed it. They didn't market this at all. In fact, they did everything in their power to get as close to saying, but not actually saying, everyone, this is not a new console in any way, shape, or form. This thing hooks up to your classic Wii, and it just conveniently costs $300. What? When you think about it that way, it makes perfect sense why this thing failed. Because who's gonna spend $300 on a fully fledged controller for the Wii? I mean, the Wii was a great console and all, but good God, do you really need this thing that badly? Yeah, you did. Because this wasn't just a controller, it was its own console. And the console that it packed was actually really good. And yeah, you're not looking at the Wii U. You're looking at just the controller. There's the Wii U we've all known so much about. I have come to the ultimate conclusion that it's just barely the right size to not fit underneath my TV, so in order to make this video, I had to put it on a chair next to my TV stand. Welcome to the future, everybody. Nothing fits. But yeah, the point being that the Wii U sold like garbage. It didn't sell well at all, and there actually weren't very many games released for it in any way. So that begs the question, where did we go from there? What happened from there forwards? Ditch the Wii remote because it's the guy she told you not to worry about. Are you noticing the similarities here? You've got a television in the middle of your console. You've got the same button layout on your console. You've got the same buttons generally, but just in different spots. And you have an extra button that nobody knows what it does. You got the power button, but instead of being here, it's on top of the system. You got a volume dial, but instead of being analog on the Wii U, instead it's regular volume buttons. And the big thing that separates these two consoles is the ability to do this. I have cut my console in half and it still works, dagnabbit. Yeah, the Nintendo Switch seemed to answer the Wii U's question with a question. Instead of fixing all the problems, what if we just did this on both sides? And we made it so you can remove them. I mean, already the Wii U gamepad was basically that, but without the removable controllers. Now the controllers are removable and the package is much sleeker and prettier. And hey, at retail, this was cheaper than the deluxe Wii U, which I believe retailed for $350. The Nintendo Switch here was rocking $300. And it was a very similar console in terms of stuff to do. So, I mean, obviously, with the amount of stuff that both of these systems do, not even just counting the elephant in the room, which is the physical similarities here, obviously, these two consoles need to be compared, and that's what we're going to do today. But let's spice things up a little bit, because people have compared the Wii U to the Switch plentifully. What about we add something interesting into the mix? Obviously, the Wii U is a similar console to the Switch, and the Switch was the direct replacement of the Wii U. But it wasn't just the replacement to the Wii U, it was also the replacement to the Nintendo 3DS, which I also conveniently have on standby. And yes, the Switch is now going to be compared to both of these at the same time. And you might think that that's unfair, but Nintendo doesn't agree with you, because when this thing was launched just a couple years later, both of these systems were completely canned. Oh, you want online services and the ability to play online games and just purchase them from our digital store? Nah, mate, you get out of the way. It's time for the new kid on the block. He's the important one now. They didn't continue support for either of these systems, which is really confusing because they released the new 2DS XL after releasing the Switch, but I digress. What I'm comparing specifically is the new Nintendo 3DS XL and the Wii U Deluxe Edition. Because, I mean, these are the best versions out of both systems, and why am I comparing the new 3DS specifically? Oh, yeah, some exclusive titles were released for it. You can still see the new, that's all that's important. The point is that, yep, both of these systems were replaced when the Nintendo Switch came around. So we gotta compare them, right? So let's talk about the actual system specifications first. And because I am a true gamer at heart, I'm going to do my research on another game system, which, because I don't really have any game systems that fill this criteria, is an iPad with this stupid looking controller thing that is very reminiscent of both of these consoles, and I'll do a video on this dingus one of these days. The new Nintendo 3DS XL is 240p in resolution. The Wii U gamepad's resolution is 480p. The Nintendo Switch is 720p. The maximum maximum FPS that the new 3DS XL can run at is 60 frames per second. The Wii U gamepad averages at 60 frames per second. The Nintendo Switch runs games at 30 frames per second. The new 3DS XL has a roughly 5.5 hour long battery life. The Wii U gamepad's battery life is around 3 to 4 hours. The first gen Nintendo Switches run for about 3 to 5 hours, and the second gen Nintendo Switches run for about 5 to 9 hours. The Nintendo 3DS uses an 804 MHz ARM11 MP Core quad-core processor. The Wii U uses a 1.24 GHz tri-core IBM PowerPC Espresso processor. And the Nintendo Switch uses a 1.2 GHz ARM4 Cortex-A57 processor. I have no idea what that is. And there's a good chance that none of you know what any of those are. The point is, I wanted to get the most accurate information I possibly could out because I'm sure someone somewhere in the world knows more than me and will be able to make do with that information what I cannot. The point being that the Switch does everything a lot better than both of these, except for the frame rate, weirdly. This thing is way choppier than the Wii U and even the 3DS. And I mean, I can almost kind of understand because, I mean, the Nintendo Switch, you're looking at the entire system, while the Wii U has a gamepad. Most of the processor is being done by this, but the 3DS too? Really? I mean, yeah, some games do make the frame rate drop down to 30 FPS, but that's on a worst case scenario. The Nintendo Switch runs games on 30 FPS as a default. And I've seen some games drastically lower that FPS even more. This thing struggles to play Minecraft. If I'm playing Minecraft in handheld mode, I can hear the thing spinning like insane. On the Wii U, nothing like that. On the 3DS, nothing like that. What? And yes, Minecraft exists for all three of these consoles, and that is mainly how I tested these consoles, because while Minecraft is a simple game, it's also a surprisingly processor-heavy game. If you don't have a console that can handle it, it can really bog your system down badly, especially newer versions of Minecraft. Obviously, the Wii U and 3DS, I kind of had to compensate for a bit because, well, they haven't made this for years. But the Nintendo Switch had a legacy version of Minecraft too, so I did all my comparisons on that version since it was the most comparable to these other versions. And even on the legacy version, this thing still struggled a fair amount. And it's kind of comical when you consider the fact that this thing is able to run Tears of the Kingdom, but it struggles to run Minecraft. In what universe should that make sense? The answer is there's no universe where that should make sense. But if you think that we're done talking about comparisons, it's time to talk about the hardware. First, I'm going to quickly brief up the 3DS, because I'm probably not going to be referring to the 3DS much with hardware, mostly these two idiots, but let's talk about the 3DS a little bit. It is wonderful. It is made like a truck. It's made with very thick, shiny, nice plastic. It opens with a super satisfying clicking mechanism that, while a little bit loose, has never failed on me. The wobbling only happens front to back. There's no wobble side to side or anything. The inside is shiny, and the glass screens are very pretty despite the low resolution. Holding onto this feels natural, even though the controller is a little bit small. The thumbstick here is pretty responsive considering it's just a little slidey stick. And the D-pad is amazing! It's my favorite D-pad ever made at this point in time. The A, B, X, and Y buttons are very clicky and responsive, just like the D-pad. Start and select are good, the home button is good, and on the back you've got the L and R buttons as well as tiny ZL and ZR buttons to get all your work done. The C-stick here doesn't seem to make much sense, as it's just simply like a touch sensor that senses where pressure is being dealt on it, rather than actually functioning like a second analog joystick and moving around it all. But hey, this works, and it's actually very responsive and usable, which is surprising, because it doesn't feel like this should work at all, but it does, and it feels like witchcraft. And hey, on the bottom, look at this. You got a stylus. It's not too big, but hey, it gets the job done. You've got a camera on the front, and you've got two more cameras on the back, which allow you to take 3D pictures and video, which is very weird, especially when you watch those videos back on this thing and it seems like the screen sinks down into the system really far. It's very trippy, and I don't like it. It freaks me out, but it's super cool nonetheless. You got the analog volume slidey switch over here, which the Switch doesn't have, and you've got the analog 3D dialing in and out switch, which I find to be very useful, because some games the 3D can give me a headache, and just turning this down a little bit makes that headache go away immediately. You don't have to have it fully on or fully off for it to work, while the volume is the same way. The speakers in here sound relatively good. They're kind of dated at this point, but they get the job done just fine. And overall, the hardware here just feels really good. And this thing feels like it could take a beating and a half. The Wii U gamepad here feels even better than the 3DS. It's made with the same kind of glossy plastic, but God, is this thing thick and sturdy. Because of its larger size, it is a bit noisier. But in no way does that mean that this thing's gonna break or snap or anything anytime soon. It feels like a controller that can really take a beating for a long time. The buttons on it are very nice and cushiony. They're very nice to hold on to. They're a good size. Everything works. The D-pad is almost as good as the 3DS's, but I think that the central pivot definitely could use some work. I've seen better D-pads. The thumbsticks here, they're almost perfect, but there is a big issue, and I will address that in just a minute. You've got start and select. You've got a home button here, which is this big button that lights up ever so slightly when you press it. You've got the power, and you got a TV button. What the hell does that do? I'll explain that in a minute. And if you flip the system over, oh my God, it's ergonomically designed. You've got these big grips here that you can easily sink your fingers into. And this giant ridge on the back side of the gamepad is so comfortable. It provides a really good place to put your hands. Again, you have ZL and ZR buttons here, which are super satisfyingly clicky. And the L and R buttons on top of this system feel just as good. Just like, oh yeah. This thing feels amazing! Definitely the best part about the Wii U's gamepad is the ergonomic setup here. It is wonderful, and just like the 3DS, it's got a stylus. I didn't even notice that this stylus was there until I looked closely at the top of the system. And this stylus is better than the 3DS's. It's longer, it's a little bit thicker, and just like the 3DS, it disappears into the system. So it's there when you need it, and it's out of the way when you don't. Not to mention that this thing features quite possibly two of the most interesting features. Yes, it features a camera, obviously, but have you noticed this outline around it? That's a sensor bar. If you don't have a sensor bar on your Wii U that is plugged into the back of it that connects to your TV or anything, you can stand the gamepad up and the gamepad becomes the sensor bar. So you can use this without a sensor bar. Is it as good as the actual sensor bar for the TV? I think it's on par. I haven't gotten that much usage out of it because most of my usage out of it has mainly just come from Mario Galaxy, but that's besides the point. And then weirdly enough, on the bottom of it, there's this port here. It was never used for anything, at least not officially. It's just there. And there it is. I don't know why, there's just this awkward trend of Nintendo consoles having these weird ports that are never used for anything. The Virtual Boy had a port for a link cable. That was never really used. The Wii Classic controller had a port on the back that was never used officially, and now the Wii U has a port on here that was never used officially. I wonder if any more weird ports like this are ever going to come out. I wonder if the headphone jack on the Nintendo Switch is ever going to get an official headphone. I mean, I'm sure that someone will consider this a proprietary port. I mean, I don't know. I've been surprised before. But definitely the biggest downside with the system are the joysticks. Not because they don't feel good, because holy crap, these joysticks feel great. They're some of the best joysticks I've used, and they rival the DualSense controller. My favorite controller ever. They rival those joysticks. They rival the joysticks on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. This is how you make a frickin' set of joysticks. There's only one big problem. They drift. Like it's nobody's business. They like to drift a lot! And people have complained about the Switch's stick drift, and I'll address that in a minute, but unlike the Switch where you can take the controllers off and just have this replaced, you can't really take these controllers off because then you would slice the console in half. And the drifting here is really bad. It started just the other day and it's gotten so much exponentially worse since then. I mean, before there was no drift at all. I played several different games to verify this, including Minecraft, Disney Infinity, and Mario Kart 8. But now suddenly this has started and it has started to affect all three of those games. Not as much Mario Kart as Disney Infinity and Minecraft. The point is that the stick drift is really bad, and unfortunately you can't really fix it without taking this to a repair place, or if you have the tech know-how to get all these little plugs off and open this thing to fix the joysticks yourself, then that'll work for you, but otherwise, you're kind of out of luck, guys. So we've talked about two sets of hardware now. What about the Nintendo Swoosh? I hate it. Now, it's not all bad. There are definitely several things that are really good about it. First of all, the actual console itself. It is insanely well built, just like the 3DS, and honestly, way more than the 3DS. This thing feels like an Apple product. Oh no, it's my stupid sticker. But this thing feels great. It is insanely durable and tough. It feels like the entire inside of it is made out of metal, and there's just a little plastic alloy painted around the outside of it so that it doesn't get cold when you touch it in the hands. Like, that's how good it feels. And on the side of it, the metal rails just knock that point home. The glass screen, while prone to smudges, is very nice. And somehow it's the exact same size as the one on the Wii U gamepad, which is insanely weird. Because I totally would have thought that these had a different size screen. It's just the resolution is different. This is 720p and the other is 480p. But the size is exactly the same. We live in a small world after all. The power and volume buttons here probably are the most ignored. The power button works, the volume buttons, I really wish it was analog volume like the gamepad and the 3DS had, but you can't win in every way. And over here you have a cartridge slot, which has a flap on the top, which makes it so that it won't get full of dust, which is a good thing. On the back of it, you have a kickstand. Oh, it's a kickstand because, oh yeah, it's a kickstand, but... Oh, well, that wasn't very good. Okay, let's try that again. What about if there's any pressure on this side? That's not pretty good. And not to mention the kickstand can just do this. One useful thing about the kickstand, though, is the fact that you can remove the micro SD card by taking the kickstand off or opening it. So that's a pretty good way to just hide the micro SD card slot. But, like, my god, this kickstand sucks. The Switch OLED improved this problem, but on the original Switch, which is the one that I have, this frickin' sucks. And I can't, there we go. Now it's in. Is it in? Yeah, it is. Good heaven. What the heck? But then we get to the controllers. And this is kind of where everything starts to fall apart. These are the Joy-Cons. They're part SNES controller, part Wii Remote, part GameCube controller, part Nunchuck, part Pro controller, part everything in between, and they're very technologically complicated. You've got the IR pointer on the bottom just like the Wii Remote had, except because it's not on the top, in order to use it, you would have to flip it over the other way. That sucks, doesn't it? You've got analog joysticks here that are able to swivel and click in, and these are the worst things ever created, and I'll get into that in just a minute. We have a set of face buttons here, which are tiny and feel like they should be on a strictly portable system when this is also meant to be a home console. You've got the power, or not the power button, the plus button here, which is the start button, and then over here you've got the minus button, which is the select button. You've got the home button, which does exactly what you think it would. Oh my gosh, I don't care! Up on the top, you've got the L and R buttons up here, as well as the ZL and ZR buttons, and while they are pretty clicky, they feel like full-on function buttons and don't have the same tactile feel to them as something like the 3DS or the Wii U gamepads. And on the inside of the controller, look at this, you've got tiny little L and R buttons for when you want to flip this on its side and play virtual console games. Oh, I'm sorry, Nintendo Switch Online retro games, or playing something like Super Mario Party, which only lets you do it like this because they're evil. Plus, these things have gyroscopes and accelerometers in them, so they function similar to Wii Motion Plus Wii remotes rather than just the original ones. And honestly, these controllers are really, really technologically complicated. $90! 90 freaking dollars for a pair of these. I'm not even joking. These are expensive to replace if something happens to them. You can get a DualSense controller or a Nintendo Switch Pro controller for cheaper than a new set of Joy-Cons. Oh, I'm sorry, mate. They're $80, not $90. $70. The DualSense is $70. It's still more expensive than those. And yeah, that was an honest mistake, because I remember paying $90 for these gray ones. Oh, but don't these come with the system? Yes. Yes, in fact, they do. Bring out your dad. Bring out your dad. Bring out your dad. These came with the console, and they didn't last too terribly long. These things lasted me about 2 years, which is okay, that's pretty good, but the problems that these have accumulated over the years are insanely bad. Have you noticed these little bumps on top of the joystick? That's the rubber literally coming off. Yep, there it goes. And then this one has the same problem. It doesn't seem that bad until you realize that, oh yeah, it was just hidden from the eyes of the beholder. And now there's no going back. These have all the problems, including batteries that barely hold on, the worst stick drift imaginable, to a point where you literally cannot keep the things from drifting around. Holding it perfectly still causes your cursor to fly all over the place and things to just randomly go off like it's nobody's business. I never threw these across the room. I never dropped them. I treated these like children, and they just abandoned me. They weren't there for me when I needed them the most. And so I had to get these gray ones because they were out of the red and blue ones, which sucks because I like the red and blue. I might be able to fix the tops of these if I just sit there and fiddle with them for a really, really long time, but I don't know how to do that. I don't even know how they messed up in the first place. They shouldn't have messed up. They should have just worked. There shouldn't be problems like this. If the Wii remote can do it, why can't these? That's my big pet peeve, is because if the Wii remote came out so long ago, why do these things have such horrific issues? If stick drift was already a problem on the Wii U, how could they not have improved it at all on the Joy-Cons? And arguably, that's not even the most aggravating problem, because yeah, let's take the new ones so that this comparison is fair. We put them on the console like this, they click into place. That's wobble. That's a lot of wobble. Oh yeah, look at that. That feels unstable. That's not good. I haven't abused this. As I said, I treat this system carefully. And these Joy-Cons feel like they could just break right off at any random moment. Oh yeah, and what is this? What is this? This is Nintendo's answer to a controller. You wanna know what you do? You take the Joy-Cons, you put them in like this. And you've got, like, the worst controller ever. What's wrong with it? Because really, this does make them a lot more manageable. But the problem is because of how tiny and pushed towards the edge all of the buttons and joysticks are, it's very cramping to reach down to hit the D-pad, D-pad buttons or the right analog stick. So if your hands aren't always on the left stick and the A, B, X, and Y buttons, you're cooked, which is where the Pro Controller comes in. But we're not talking about the Pro Controller yet. We'll get into this in just a moment. We're talking about just the base Switch here. I mean, this was manageable enough. I didn't mind using it because I have smaller than average hands, but there are very, very few reviews I've seen of the Switch that actually say that this is good. Most reviews I see say that this is like the worst thing ever. And so, generally speaking, if I had to choose a console based specifically on its hardware alone, the Nintendo Switch would without a doubt be my last choice. Because, yeah, you have a lot of technologically capable things going on here, but like, this is just better. And so is this. The Wii U and the 3DS feel better. I think they look a little bit better because these are meant to look like this. The Switch is meant to look like whatever you plug onto it. There's a uniform design that is going on with these. I mean, hell, the 3DS has all these intricate patterns and stuff on it. This is a Galaxy print. There were tons of other prints. There were Mario prints. There were Pokemon prints. There were lots of prints for the 3DS. The Wii U had special editions that covered the entire console. When it came to Switch special editions, sometimes you would have the back of the console with like a little effect on it, and the Joy-Cons would be different colors. And if you were really lucky, they would make the dock look different than the standard dock that this thing came in. Oh yeah, that reminds me, the dock frickin' sucks. It's a hunk of frickin' plastic that you just shove the Switch in and it scratches the crap out of your screen. I have been lucky not to have my screen cracked. I mean, knock on wood that it doesn't happen now that I brought it up. But oh yeah, the screen loves to crack. People have just like bent these things because of how thin they are. Like, there are tons of issues that have come up over the years with the quality control of the Nintendo Switch's hardware, and that's incredibly disappointing because why am I defending the 2012 failure that nobody remembers over the thing that everybody says is like one of the greatest consoles ever? That shouldn't happen! Now, when talking about these types of hardware, this is the only one where the 3DS is not going to be a part of the picture. There is something else that we also have to talk about. It's called Pro Controllers. This is not an officially licensed Wii U Pro Controller. I have yet to actually get an official Wii U one, please don't bombard me in the comments. I know that this probably isn't going to be as good as an official Nintendo one, but this is the one that I have, so I'm going to yell with this one in the picture anyways. And I'm here to tell you that both of these Pro controllers are fantastic. And this is the first thing that I 100% absolutely am gonna give to the Switch. Because between these two Pro controllers, yeah, the Switch is just better. But if you think that means that the Wii U's Pro controller is bad, oh boy, you got another thing coming. Look at this thing. It's made with the same type of plastic as the Wii U. Again, it feels rock solid. The grips are super comfortable and ergonomically designed. Yeah, you've got the sticks on top, but that matches the gamepad. And to be fair, it's not that different from a PlayStation controller, which just had its sticks on the bottom. So instead of holding it like this, you hold it like this. While on the Nintendo Switch, you actually have your thumbs where they're supposed to be evenly on the controller. You've got the A, B, X, and Y buttons, which feel great. You've got the world's brightest LEDs in the entire world shining in your face while you're using it. Yeah, I don't like that very much. You got the power button, the home button, the plus and minus button, but you don't have motion controls, you don't have a screen, you don't have a volume dial, you don't have a TV button, and honestly, you don't have any of the things that made the Wii U gamepad such an awesome controller in the first place. What you have for a Pro controller here is the bare bones basics needed to play regular Wii U games. And for a lot of people, that's good enough. But for other people, that's not even remotely good enough. I mean, honestly, you can't use this as a first-person controller or a first-player controller for most games. Most games, if you're the only one playing, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna be using this, because the console says that you can't. The Pro controllers are meant to be player 2, 3, 4, and so on controllers, which makes sense, but at the same time, you also have Wii remotes that work as player 2, 3, and 4 controllers. And if you have a Wii Classic Controller Pro, that has pretty much all the same buttons as this thing does, except for the power button. That is not on that because you have to plug it into a Wii remote. But to be fair, you don't have to plug this into a Wii remote, so I think it's worth it. You do have buttons up here. You have the shoulder buttons and then the triggers, which they're not even half as good as the ones on the gamepad, let's be honest here. The sticks are very responsive and do not have any stick drift, at least from everything I can see. And then on the back, you can open the thing up to fix it if something happens to go wrong. So there you go. All in all, a pretty good controller. So what's the deal with the Switch Pro controller? Everything this does, but better in every single way, except the D-pad. I mean, this is a bad example because this is an off-brand, so the whole D-pad pushes in like one big button. But on the original Wii U, I mean, yeah, the D-pad is the exact same as the one on the gamepad. This one doesn't have enough of a central pivot to stop all 4 buttons from being pushed down at the same time, which sucks because it's basically created the one thing that it swore to destroy. But other than that, it feels very similar to the Wii U Pro controller, but with even more refined grips, with this light rubbery texture on the outside of it that just feels great. The buttons are now up at the top, so the sticks are at this asymmetrical angle, which works better for controllers for a reason. The buttons are even nicer than the ones on the Wii U. The sticks are way better! Way better! They're fantastic! I mean, they're pretty comparable to the gamepad's joysticks, but without any stick drift. And unlike the gamepad, this thing I got right when it came out and have been abusing the crap out of ever since. And I haven't gone to go through 2 pairs of Joy-Cons that the second pair is already starting to drift again. You have a controller that does what a controller is supposed to do. Start and select work, the home and capture buttons work just fine. This stupid thing just turned on in the background again. And look, it works. It works phenomenally. I can do whatever I want. The shoulder buttons are shoulder buttons. The shoulder triggers are shoulder triggers. I do like how large they are so you can easily get a good grip on them. And unlike the Wii U Pro controller, which used this awkward micro USB on it, this one uses USB-C, which is objectively a better charging method as it charges things way faster, and it doesn't have that awkward proprietary charger that the Wii U had. Like, what the heck is this actually? But this also has motion controls in it. The same kind of gyroscopes and accelerometers as what the Joy-Cons have in them. And this thing lasts for like 40 hours on a single charge. Not to mention, it also has an NFC reader on it, which means you can scan amiibos using the Pro controller. On the Wii U, that's exclusive to the gamepad. So it seems right now that the competition is really fierce between these systems. Come back here, 3DS. There you are. Look at you, just sitting over there in the background, not getting any of the credit. But where we really are going to go off the rails is the game library. Because what more importance does a console have than its video games? And ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a reality check. It's time for everybody's favorite game, calculating things and bringing up statistics. Here are some statistics here. The Switch has had 96 officially licensed titles released for it by Nintendo themselves. And I think that's going to remain like that since the Switch 2 is on the horizon. It doesn't make sense for Nintendo to release games specifically for this console. While the Wii U had 41 games for it, but the 3DS had 183 games. So if we start to calculate things with a calculator, 183 games plus 41 games equals 224 officially released titles licensed by Nintendo for these two systems versus 96 for the Switch. Imagine that. But let's even the odds a little bit here. Oh, did you think that I meant in favor of the Nintendo Switch? Nah, mate, there's something that this console doesn't have that both of these two have. It's called backwards compatibility. If we suddenly introduce the libraries from the DS and the Wii, we get 61 officially licensed titles for the Wii and 130 more officially licensed titles from the DS. So if we plug all these numbers together, that brings us to 191 plus 224. In total, these two systems can play 415 officially licensed Nintendo games, not even counting a single title made by a third party. Imagine that. Now, does this seem unfair? Yeah, that's because it is. Because a lot of Wii U and 3DS games have gone onto the Switch. In fact, a lot of this library in total has ended up on the Switch. So a lot of these games aren't even counted when I talked about the 96. I was just talking about officially licensed titles that came out. So in total, 39 Wii U games ended up onto the Switch, 51 3DS games ended up onto the Switch, 42 DS games ended up on here, and 51 Wii games ended up on here. If we plug that in, that's 183 more games. Plus the 96 brings us to a grand total of 279 officially licensed Nintendo games available for the Switch. So if we take the 415 games total that are compatible with these two systems and subtract the 279 games that are available on the Switch, we get 136 Nintendo games. At the same time, we can't just judge these systems by how many games were put on them, because have you guys ever heard the term quantity over quality or quality over quantity? Yeah, that just completely nullifies this entire statistic and throws it to the side. Because while yes, these might have had more games, if the games weren't as good as the ones on the Switch, what does it matter anyway? And unfortunately, that isn't something that I can address, because I don't have every official Nintendo game made for the Switch, nor do I have all the games made for these two systems, and I probably will never acquire all of them. The Wii U maybe, because it just didn't have that big of a library, but even then, most of those games were ported to the Switch anyways, so there's a good chance that I have most of the games just as the Switch variants. I mean, I know for a fact I have some of them because of these little cartridge things here. Hey, look at this. We've got Mario U Deluxe. We've got Mario Kart 8. We've got Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. These were Wii U games that came out, not exclusive to the Switch. If you had a Wii U, you could play all 4 of these games. So if I take these games out, hey, would you look at that? That's half the library of games that I have in here. I mean, we don't need to remember that Nintendo Labo existed. Yes, I bought it at some point. It freaking sucked. I don't even know why I still have that cartridge, because all the cardboard things are gone. But then you also have to look at the other games in here. Super Mario Party, Mario Odyssey, Snipper Clips Plus. I like these games. And there are other ones that came out, like Splatoon 2. One game I've always wanted to get for the Switch is ARMS. It was such a creative looking fighting game that looked like it could be insanely fun with the use of the gyroscopes built into the Joy-Cons, and one of the few actual uses for the Joy-Cons outside of just being smaller, objectively worse version of Wii remotes that you attach to the Switch in order to turn it into a worse version of the Wii U gamepad that you could take wherever you wanted. Not to mention the price. You would pay $200 for a new 3DS XL and $350 for a Wii U. That's $550 total for both of these systems, while the Switch was rocking a simple $300 price tag and left you with all this stuff. So really, we have to answer the question, what's better, the Switch or the Wii U and the 3DS? You guys are gonna love my answer. It depends. And back in the day, if it was like 2022, my answer would be these two systems right here. But since all those online services and things that made these consoles so usable have been shut down, they're just not as usable as they used to be anymore. The games that I listed earlier were just ones that were released on discs. So many games were released exclusively on the Nintendo eShop and are no longer accessible that, what are you gonna do? There's not much you can do. They're gone. And unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch has kind of turned into the modern version of the Wii, except even worse with the Nintendo eShop. Because so much of the eShop is just shovelware that you really have to go digging to find anything worth buying or have something already in the back of your head that you know you want to buy when you go and browse the eShop. Browsing the eShop is dead. There is no reason to do it anymore. I'm sick of looking at these thumbsticks. Back in the day, if you looked at the eShop, you would have so much to look at and all of it was worth looking into. While nowadays, it's mostly just shovelware by third parties who do not give a damn about you at all. They just want your $5, and that's it. They'll do whatever it takes to get it. And no care or love is put into hardly any of the games that are being released on the Switch, which is incredibly depressing, because one of the things that I definitely think won in the gamepad's favor, or the Wii U's favor specifically, is the fact that because not very many people really knew what this console was, the people who did know what this console was went above and beyond to make games for it. But hey, I'm just some random doofus yelling on the internet, so you tell me what you guys think is a better buy. These 2 nuggets, or this 1 nugget that is going to be replaced in 2 months. With all that said, thank you guys for watching this insanely long video. Bye!